This is how to do the mini Easter egg basket pattern that you saw that I posted on my blog. So if you prefer the written pattern, I will have the link down below to show you where you can go on my blog to get the actual written pattern. I kept it pretty simple, and it's easy for you to modify any way that you see fit too. And again, it's just a little basket. As you can see against my hand, it's pretty small, and it's great for little trinkets like a little bear, or if you want to put little candies in it or something. And this is, I thought, would be cute to even hide some of these around your house or outdoors with goodies for kids at Easter time. And it's a two-step process. Basically, you're doing the bottom part, which is the basket part, and then you're adding in the handle part. And then again, like I said, you can modify it any way you see fit. So the first thing we got to do is, because we're using the Knifty Knitter loom, and the gauge, again, which is the space between these pegs, is big, we're going to use 2 strands of worsted weight yarn as one. If you have a thicker yarn, you can go ahead and try that and see how it works. But again, we're going to do this with 2 strands. And all we have to do is create our slip knot, as we've done on many projects before. Now, because this Knifty Knitter has a little knob here, we can actually place this there for now. If you don't have a loom with a knob and you're trying to do this, then you can simply hold it with your thumb as you work your way around for the drawstring instead. So now what we have to do for the drawstring is we're working our way back and forth around the loom. So we're starting here at our starting peg, go behind that, and then making sure you got both strands come in front. Then go behind, in front, behind, in front. And that's all you're doing for the drawstring cast on. I have a video. As you see, we're getting back to the beginning. Now we're getting back to the starting. And make sure these are out of your way. As you can see, now we're going to lay it in front on top of the pegs. So we have 2 sets of yarn that we got to contend with. So what we're going to do is we're going to work our way around, laying it in front, and wherever there's 2, we're going to knit over. So because we got 2 sets of strands, we can knit that over. This one doesn't have 2, so again, you're going to go over until you find where there's 2 that you can knit over. And by 2, I mean the first time you wrapped around, and then the second time, and just knit it over. Knit over, and again. Now as you get back to the beginning, you're going to see that we have 1 more here. Now we go in front, and there's not 2 there, but now because we're back to the beginning, we can wrap like we normally would do. So push all these down. And the next step after doing that is we're just going to knit 1 row. So I'm going to use the E-wrap method. It's just the method that I prefer using. And I'm just going to E-wrap around. So this will make it quicker. I can just wrap it. Okay, once I'm back to the beginning, now I can go ahead and I can knit over. And what I usually like to do is I like to knit over. Oops, excuse me, I missed one. I forgot to wrap 1 more. Okay, there we go. What I like to do is I like to knit the last one. And what that does is it locks it in place for me. And now I can quickly go around and knit the rest of them over. And again, that was just knitting 1 row. Okay, back to the beginning, push those all down out of your way, and that was the first row we had to do of just knitting 1 row. Now we're going to move on to the next part, which is we're going to purl 1 row. Again, this is following the pattern that I have on my blog. And with purling, excuse me, as you remember, we bring the yarn underneath our loop. So we actually didn't need to push them down. Oops, I got messed up. Okay, so making sure you're just putting it underneath the loop. Now go ahead and just purl this one row. Okay, we're almost back to the beginning. Okay, last one. Oops, got my other line in the way there. Okay, now what you can do too is, since we've done a couple rows, we can actually take this off of our little knob here, which I believe is called like an anchor peg. Take that off and get rid of the loop being in it, and now put it on the inside of your loom. On the inside of your loom. This is what we're going to use to pull it closed, but we don't need to do anything with that now. So that's that part. Excuse me. Now we're going to move on to the next part. For this part, we're going to be knitting 3 and then purling 3 for 6 rows. So I've got my row counter out just to make sure I don't do too many rows. So you can push these down if you want. It doesn't have to go all the way down because, again, we're going to be alternating knitting and purling. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to knit 3 pegs. So 1, 2, 3. If you want to do a flat knit, you can probably do that as well. This is just easier so I don't have to have stitch markers if I just wrap. So knit 3. Now come in front and purl 3. And again knit 3. So go ahead and continue doing this till you get 6 rows completed, and then we'll come back here and we'll do the next part. Okay, we've completed our 6 rows of knit 3, purl 3. Now we're going to close this off. So remember what I said, we have this strand right here. Go ahead and pull that. And this is where the magic happens, where it closes up the project for you. As you can see, we're getting it closed off. Now, because we got 2 strands, it may be a little tight, and you may not get this completely closed off. And that's okay, because again, this is the bottom of the basket. You may not get it perfect. So close it as tight as you can, just being careful not to pull too tight. And as you can see, it's closed off some. Now, what I like to do is there's a way to make it look like it's closed off more. We're going to go ahead and we're going to tie this off. I like to tie this off now versus waiting till the end of the project. It's just my preference. You could always wait till the end and when you take it off, do this part. But I prefer now. So what I usually do is I take my crochet hook and I go on the other side. And I go in a stitch if I can. It doesn't really matter which one. So I can come out the other side and I grab my string that's there and I bring it through to this side, because this is the this is the inside of the basket. So if you do that, you can start seeing how you can kind of have it working the inside. Now you just stay on the inside and you just kind of figure out a stitch on the opposite side of where your yarn is, and try to get your crochet hook to go in a stitch, which that didn't really go in. Okay, it's in a stitch, then you grab your yarn and bring it over, and I'm just doing one at a time because I didn't want to bring both, but I want to bring both over, and then you can kind of give it a little tug, and as you see, we're starting to close off that hole a little more. So now, because we're on this side, we're going to go just over this way and grab another stitch, and it's basically just trying to close off that hole if we can. So we're just kind of weaving it around and tugging it a little bit, so as you can see, we're starting to get that closed off. Now once you get it kind of where it's closed off to the way you want it, because we have two strands, we're going to separate them so that we can tie this. So now we're going to come over here. And you don't have to, but this is just a way that I would do it. And we're going to grab the one strand instead of both and pull it through. And now just tie these two together. And I usually double tie, or double knot I guess you'd say, just because I like to make sure it's closed off. Now as you see, we've got our little basket bottom closed off. Now the other thing we can do here is, since we're done with the drawstring part, you can just cut the strings, still leaving a little tail if you want. You can work that tail in later, but this way it gets the extra yarn out of your way when you're working it. So now as you see, we've got our basket closed. Here's what the bottom side, outside the basket is going to look like. And you kind of, now we go on to the next part of the pattern, which is actually where we just, excuse me, continue kind of the same pattern of knit 3, purl 3, but we're going to alternate it every couple of rows to purl 3, knit 3. So that's what we're going to do now. And we'll come back and we'll do that in a second. Okay, so as I said, now we're going to continue the same for the next 2 rows of doing the knit 3 and then purl 3. So go ahead and do that. You're going to knit just like we just did, but go ahead for 2 rows and do knit 3, purl 3, and then come back and we'll be switching the stitches around. So I just did the 2 rows that were knit 3, purl 3. Now we need to switch up for the next 2 rows and do a purl 3, knit 3. So now instead of starting with the knit, we're going to do 2 rows where we're starting with the purl instead. So go ahead and go around doing purl 3, knit 3 for 2 rows, and then come back and we'll move on to the next row set. So now we did now we're on to the last set of 2 rows that we need to do, and this is going to be back to the knit 3, purl 3. So you can push these down if you want. And again, now we're going to do 2 rows where we're simply going back to what we started with the knit 3, purl 3. So go ahead and do 2 rows where you're going to be knitting and then purling 3 for 2 rows, and then come back and we'll be ready to take the basket part off the loom. Okay, as you can see, guys, we have a little pouch now. If we put this down through, there's the basket part. We got a nice little pouch for the basket, and now we're ready to take this off the loom again to turn it into this part right here. So we're going to do a crochet cast off, and we're going to do 1 chain in between. I'm just going to move these down just a little bit because I know that some of them are a little too high for me. And all we need is our tool, we need scissors, and we will need the crochet hook back again. So what we're going to do, excuse me, is sorry about that, I had a little technical difficulties. So again, what we're going to do is we're going to rewrap our first peg here, because we only need 1 chain in between. And then we're going to knit over. You're going to move it over to the next peg, making sure to grab both strands of yarn as you go. Knit over. Rewrap it 1 more time. Knit over. Move it over. And again, just making sure you get both loops on. As you can see, I missed one, so we just want to make sure they're both on there. Let me move this down just a little bit so hopefully you can see a little better. Okay, so as you can see, we got it wrapped over. Now we just need to knit this over. Rewrap it once. Move it over. Again, being very careful to get both parts of the yarn over. That's a little better. Okay. And then we're going to knit over. You move it over. Oops. Again, I don't know why it's fighting me so much on that part. So just be careful that you get both parts over. Okay. And knit it over. Rewrap it one more time. I mean, you can choose to do more than one chain in between. I'm just doing one like I did in the pattern. And I'm going to continue this process all the way back to the beginning. We're getting down to the last couple stitches. I'm getting ready to move this one over. Knit over. Rewrap it one more time. Knit over again. And move over to this last peg. Go ahead and knit it over. You can rewrap it one more time. Knit that over. Now you're going to cut yourself a tail, probably like 5 or 6 inches, whatever you're comfortable with, because you can hide it later. Grab your crochet hook and put this last loop on your crochet hook. Making sure you get both strands if you're using 2 strands of yarn. Now as you can see, we've got a little basket here. But what we need to do is make sure it's joined. If you can see, there's a gap here. This is where we stop, and this is where we began. So we want to just kind of go over to the beginning loop. Looking through my camera, so it makes it a little tricky. And you're going to end up doing just a simple join together. And kind of give it a little tug if you want. And then I'm going to bring the whole strand through. Or all strands through, sorry. And give it a little tug. And this becomes our little basket. And you can, I mean, if you don't want to add handles for the Easter basket, you can use this as a little trinket basket. You could put like your jewelry in it or whatever. What you can do now, because you got this tail, is you can, I sometimes like to weave it in a little more. Just picking a stitch down below where it is, bring it through a little ways so you have a loop, then bring it through all the way again. Just to kind of make it a little more secure. And then I can trim this a little more. And again, you can hide it a little more later on. But this is our basket part of our thing. Now, it may not lay as flat. Like, I'm hoping this will lay flat. The other one had a little, I mean, you can kind of push it out and see that it's not. But you just kind of maneuver it to get it to be the flatness that you want. So now the next part is the I-cord in order to have the handle. So we're going to quickly, I'm going to pause this. I'm going to stop this, and we're going to come back, and I'm going to show you how to do the I-cord using the same Knifty Knitter loom and the same 2 strands of yarn. Sorry about that, I just looked at my pattern. I only used 1 strand of yarn to do the I-cord, but again, we're going to use this Knifty Knitter as well, and move our scissors and move our crochet hook off to the side. I would have a row counter, because we're going to need to do 30 rows, so that's a good way to keep track of it. If you're someone like me and don't usually like math, you want your hook, obviously. Into the I-cord you want your slip knot, like we do for almost every project. And this time we're going to only use 3 pegs on our loom. Now again, if you wanted to use a different loom to do the I-cord for thickness and that, you can go ahead and try a different loom, but I'm using the same one we did the basket on. And I'm just placing it on the first peg. And I'm going to kind of hold this tail. Now actually I forgot, I need to make a bigger, when you do the slip knot for the I-cord, give yourself a little bit bigger tail. Now you'll understand why when we get to the other project. So give yourself a little longer tail when you're doing it. And again, place it on a peg. You're only going to be using 3 pegs. You're going to want to wrap around. And then you're going to bring that right around in front. And knit over. And you may need to tug at this a little bit when you're knitting it over. It's not usually this hard, but again, I'm looking through the camera, and so my angle is a little off. Okay. And now all you're going to do to continue on with the I-cord is keep wrapping it. See how it's behind it? Just bring it around in front. And I'll put a link to the I-cord video I did. And that was counted as one row, so go ahead and click your row counter if you have one. And again, we're just going to do it again, and every time we knit over, we're going to click. So there's another row, and you can hear the clicking. Now again, I'm going to show you again when we have it towards the back. We're right behind them, and bringing it around in front. And you're basically just wrapping it. And this is kind of like the flat knit when you think about it. The flat knit usually requires it to be in front. And then again, just knit over. So go ahead and do this until you get 30 rows done. Now remember, every time you knit over, go ahead and click your row counter, and you can give this a little tug as you're going, and as you see, it's creating this on the back. So go ahead and do that, and I'll be back when we get to row 30. Okay guys, my video kind of messed up when I was doing the I-cord, so I had to redo this part just to show you how I took it off before we actually attach it to the basket. Now just to let you know, in the other video, I'd already tried doing this, and I'd already attached one side before I realized I had some technical difficulties. So I'm going to show you how I would take the I-cord off, and then I'm going to show you how to attach using the other side that I hadn't attached yet. So first of all, I have a sample I-cord on here, and again, I will link to the original I-cord video that I have, so if you want to follow that as well. Now when you're ready to take it off, like I said, I just did a little one here, just so I could show you. When you're ready to take it off, what I typically do is I just move the outer pegs to the middle peg, one at a time, and then I knit over. So I'm just going to move the outer to the inner. That just sounds a little weird, but okay. And then we knit it over. Take this one and knit it over. So again, with this pattern, once you hit 30, this is how you're going to take it off. Now what you can do is you can cut your yarn. Remember, leave it long enough tail, because we're going to be using the tail to help weave it into the project. And now we can take this loop off, and when you're done, you would just take your, yarn tail. Give the camera a minute to adjust here. You would take your yarn tail, and you would just pull it through that loop. Okay, and you would give it like a tug, and then that would be your I-cord. That's how you would take it off. Now what we have to do, is attach it. So we don't need this anymore. We don't actually need any more yarn, unless you decide you want to attach it a different way. But as you can see, I've already attached it to one side. All I did was use the tail as a way to start weaving it in. And because there's still some of the tail left, I could continue weaving it in. So let me show you how I started that on this side. Like I said, I had technical difficulty in the other video. So kind of flip this up, and as you notice, let me come in a little bit here. We've got these different loops here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to lay this in front. Again, you want this on the inside of your basket. And you may have to go down a little ways to get it to attach where you want it. Again, it's all about how far. You could go way down if you want the handle not to be up as high, or you can go higher. It's basically how high up you want the handle to be from the basket. So if we're ready to attach, we're going to, like I said, we're going to be on the inside. And I'm right-handed, so I got to make sure everything's out of my way. And we have our tail, as you can see. And it's a pretty long tail, and you want to keep it long enough, again, because we're going to be weaving it in. So the first thing you do is you want to position where you think you're going to need it to be. Again, right across from where you put the other handle, as close as you can. Excuse me. And I'm going to turn this inside out just to make it a little easier for me to show you. And you can do that as well. You can turn your project inside out, like this, attach your handle, and then turn it back the other way if you want. So if we're working on this side, I need this tail to be weaved in. So what I'm just going to simply do is I'm going to find a loop that we had, grab the loop, bring it all the way through. This is just to set where I want the anchor point to be. Now I'm going to go, and I want it to be obviously in this I-cord, otherwise it's not going to really attach that well. So I don't know why okay, so now what we're going to do is we're just going to weave it in, working our way back up to the top. So I may pick another stitch, and again, I'm picking a stitch that's in the basket first, before I pick a stitch that's in the I-cord. And again, I don't know why. Okay. So we're going to go, then we're going to go through the I-cord this time. So remember, we went through the basket, through the I-cord. And then we're going to grab it and bring it through both loops. And And again, this is going to help attach this I-cord to the project. And you're going to do the same thing again, finding a loop. And again, if you're left-handed, you'll probably be working on the other side more. You're going to find another loop that you can use to your advantage here. Go through the I-cord as well, and then grab the string and pull it through. Now if you want, because it's going to attach to one side, you can now come over here and do the same process. You can grab another loop from the basket, another loop from the I-cord, grab your string, and pull it through. And what that is doing, as you can see, is it's attaching to it, and you're going to work your way all the way up. And if you do this like X pattern where you work almost like shoelaces, you work this way, and then you can work that way, work this way, getting yourself basically up to the top of the I-cord. So again, I'm going to come over here, and really, depending on what you plan on using this for exactly, like the weight of it, will determine really how attached you need it to be, how strong you want it to be to the basket. I mean, if this is just for decoration, you may not need to have it as strong to it. If it's going to be something that you're going to put a lot of goodies in, then I would make sure you have the basket attached pretty well. Oops. I missed a loop. So because I'm doing this where it's kind of close together, it's like sewing it up the side of the basket. And I'm not as particular of exactly what loops I get. I mean, you can try to get them as close as you can to the I-cord. Oh, come on, you little. And yes, I do talk to my yarn. There we go. And as you can see, what we're doing is we're working our way up, and it's becoming attached. See, as you can see, it's coming attached on the bottom. And now, so I would continue this process, just kind of picking ones from further up if you want. I mean, I think the best thing is make sure the bottom of it is as attached as you can, because that's obviously where it's going to be anchored the most. Oops, that one didn't work. And you'll find that too, that you'll sometimes grab a loop and it doesn't work, so don't get mad. Just find another that will agree with you. And I might be using the wrong crochet hook too, so I mean, different size crochet hooks might work easier in the loops. I just tend to have a preference of what I use. And as you notice on this side now I have 2 loops. It's okay, 1 or 2 loops from the basket. It really, to me, doesn't really matter, because you're working on the inside, and then all you're trying to do is just get this handle to be as attached as you can. So it's kind of like sewing it, which, I mean, if you actually had a looming needle, those purple ones I think that come with loom kits, you could probably actually use that as well, sort of, to do the same idea. But I prefer the crochet hook. So as you can see, we're getting closer to the end, so I'm going to come up here, which is around our brim, and I'm going to grab in there as we just been doing. Oops, get over here. Come here. I really hate when stuff fights me. Okay, get in there. But the fighting just shows you that not even expert loomers can get everything to work sometimes. Okay, I think I know what I'm doing wrong. Here we go. Oh, seriously? Well, let's try again. Okay, maybe I just had too many loops, so let's just do 1 loop. And then 1 loop in the I-cord. Now we should be able to pull it through. It's going to make me a liar. Really? Okay. Well, fine. I will figure you out. Ha ha ha. Okay. See, even I fight with the projects ahead of time. So as you can see, it's getting it tighter, but you want to make sure it's flush against this. I guess that's the word I want to use. So we're going to make sure we grab one off the basket top part. That's what I was trying to do before, but it wasn't cooperating. And I'm going to go in. This time I'm going to leave it as a loop. Bring it in through again and tighten it, just so it kind of creates a starting of a knot. I'm going to do the same process on the other side. Grab one of my loops. I'm also looking through my camera, so that makes my perception a little off. And again, we're going to pull this through. We're just creating a loop again to bring the rest of it through. And what that helps to do is to create kind of a knot. And you want to create a couple more. You just want to make sure you can go back through a loop, like I'm going down here just to redo another knot. And what that's doing is it's making it stronger onto the project. So once you kind of do a few knots, like I said, you might want to go back through your loop or your I-cord, randomly putting these knots in just to keep it secure. Again, it's going to depend on what you're doing it or using this for. And the other thing you can do is at the very end, do one more by hand. And now just trim. I mean, you can trim it however long you want, because you can actually tie it, or excuse me, take your crochet hook and weave it back into the basket anywhere that you want, so that it doesn't show as much. And now turn it back the right way. Zoom out here. I guess I'm already out. And there we go. We've attached it. Now I have to finish this one up a little more because I had stopped. But that's what we do. And as you can see, if you just tie it, kind of like how this one is, it's not going to stay attached. Like I said, I have to finish this side up. But in the video, I pretty much explained. But like I said, there was a technical difficulty. So this is how you would keep finishing it off, and you would have it a lot more sturdy to your project. So I hope this helps. It's a great little mini Easter basket for Easter, and I can't wait to share my next project with you.